right. First, I wanted to say thank you to Metro New York Library Council for funding this project and for giving us an extension on completing the work. Of the 1,278 mini discs, there are less than 150 left to catalog on or before the 18th of November. And as you'll see, we've pushed some 600, you will see, some 600 entries to the web, and of the planned 30 or so audio segments, there are about 21 already up on the site. Taking you to the beginning of the project, WNYC's news reporters had previously been using standard analog audio cassettes for their field recordings for many years. But with the availability and improved sound quality of portable digital recording, they shifted to optical mini disc format by 1999-2000. And pretty much by 2000, everyone in the news department was using a mini disc recorder. At the same time, this was convenient because of its size and the ability to place digital markers on segments while the recording was in progress, so that going back to desired material was quicker and easier. I should also emphasize that MiniDisc is not an archival format or standard and is strictly a consumer one. Typically, the archives has not saved field recordings since the introduction of flash recorders that came in after MiniDiscs, which lasted until about, again, 2008. The news department saves that material now on their own as the staff of the news department has grown exponentially to more than 60 people, and the archive staff has remained constant at about 3. Our collection policy basically has us saving published materials at this point. That is published podcast and broadcast materials. Now, of course, in the past, we took in many containers like the one pictured here that are usually arranged by reporter name and subject area. And this is the general list of subject and topic headings that we kept in mind when going through these uncatalogued boxes of field recordings. Also, knowing the beats covered by the respective recorders, of course, was helpful in narrowing things down. So, for example, for a large number of discs selected for this project, they were recorded, say, by reporter Cindy Rodriguez, whose beat focused on homelessness, immigration, and low-income people. Marion McCune also did an enormous amount of coverage of immigration issues over the years, while, say, Fred Mogul covered health issues like exposure to lead and the prevalence of asthma in poor neighborhoods of color. Bob Henley and other reporters were often at City Hall, where there were protests involving the issues listed here on the slide of one kind or another. And I should also add that the reporters are, of course, individuals, and each, despite our efforts to get them to label their work in a certain way and to be consistent, each has a method to their workflow, particularly when they're on a deadline. So this is all to say we made the best estimate based on how these mini discs were labeled. And of course, there was plenty of shorthand to deal with. Someone might scribble a year, it might not always be complete. We'd have to do a little research on it. PC generally meant press conference, something like ACS, I've come to know is Agency for Children's Services, HLES, or for homeless, and so on. Also, since we don't have the bandwidth to listen to everything, I should note that the mini discs themselves can hold 60, 74, and 80 minutes of higher quality material. And in 2000, I should note too that Sony had introduced the mini disc long play, which allowed for double the recording time at a lower sound quality, and that was periodically used by the reporters as well. But we wanted to effectively get the best bang for our buck or grant dollars. So we figured that giving our cataloger, in this case, some 20 minutes per mini disc to retrieve some essential information before moving on to the next disc, which is how we came up with our dollar figure and based on the per hour rate that we're paying this particular cataloger. And I do want to note that once all these recordings get ingested into our new digital asset management system, We will be running the files through an AI speech-to-text program so that we'll have transcripts of the complete audio for adding to the catalog record. Now, as you probably know, AI speech-to-text isn't perfect. There is always issues with proper names and places, at least currently, but things are improving as time goes on, and we expect that it should be a real big help down the road. So once we selected the 1,278 mini-discs and assigned catalog numbers and corresponding barcodes to them, manifest was drawn up and they were shipped to our digitization vendor, George Blood, outside of Philadelphia. Most of these he was able to rip, that is to pull off the digital information from the disc in quicker than real time. There were about 30 problematic items where you actually had to play the disc, the mini disc, in real time in order to get the material off. These 8-track files were transcoded and converted to high-resolution WAV files at 44.1 kilohertz 16-bit, which is basically your CD level sampling and bit rate, before being sent back to us. And the vendor also photographed the mini disc itself as part of the catalog record. We were then able to easily make conversion to MP3s, listening copies for the cataloger to easily access without having to deal with a very bulky file, but still very listenable. And access the JPEG photo as well, so we could just go over what was originally written on the disc. And this is his spreadsheet. It's a partial copy of it that he's adding the basic descriptive information, names and subject headings and dates for each of the mini discs. And you can see some of the, if I look closely, I can see some of the, it's a little small. Some of the details, there's Harlem Interfaith Community Press Conference, there's an Amadou Diallo 5th anniversary related mini disc. There's stuff about the closing of the naval base in Vieques in Puerto Rico, city council hearings, and so on. This spreadsheet was then loaded into our existing PB Core catalog database, which we use with a specialized script that allows us to push the catalog abstract to the web. And you can see this was one of the mini discs. You may recall when New Jersey Governor McGreevey resigned, and there was sort of a big event because he was announcing himself as a gay politician, and so on. That was sort of a big part of his leaving at the time back in 2004. So here we actually have some of the entry subject headings, and then of course we were able to easily find a transcript of the remarks and insert that as well. As noted at the beginning of this talk, we pushed about half of the some 600 of the that is 600 of the 1,278 mini disc items to the web, and they're currently preceded by 21 representative items with audio, which I will be adding probably another 9 or so to before we're done with all of the catalog work, as previously noted. Now, I should mention that typically New York Public Radio does not publish unedited field recordings, which means this is largely because they contain all the material one generally doesn't hear on a produced or published broadcast or podcast piece. That is, you'll hear sound checks, mic thumping, jostling, reporters rephrasing questions, and the like. For this publication, we tended to select public events that were open to scrutiny from the get-go, as opposed to, say, exclusive interviews, just because there are times when interviewees will tell a reporter not to include something they said on the air or something that was said to the reporter confidentially. Kind of in short, print reporters have their notebooks, and which they generally don't release. And radio reporters have their field recordings. Let's see, we're going to take you to some audio clips from the site just so you can get a sense of some of the material here. Again, field recordings will vary from site to site or location, whether it's outside event, or in this case, We have a meeting indoors, a church-related interfaith meeting on police brutality that was held in Harlem on July 15th, 2001. Let me just get that. And we're just going to go arbitrarily to a middle spot.
As a student of John Jay and as a citizen of your community, only in a community of color would a informant with the kind of track record that this informant had could be acted upon without going through the proper channels to check the track record. There's no observation being done from Ms. Friel's apartment, no criminal activity. All these steps would have been done in Bensonhurst. In a community that wasn't a community of color, they wouldn't have dared to do this. And they only do this because they didn't think that in the coldest night of the year we'd be here about this issue. That's what, and I want to
just try the next one here.
All right, the last question is, Mayor Bloomberg says he supports the right of gays to marry, yet his administration fought you guys in court. How do you assess his level of support? Do you try to have it both ways?
Schizophrenic, but you know, the court battle's over, and now this struggle is in the political arena, and it's time for Mayor Bloomberg to put his money where his mouth is, and to walk the walk, talk the talk, and fight this very fundamentally important fight for the rights of all couples, regardless of who they are, what their sexual orientation is, who their partners are, to engage in the most fundamental act, marrying and protecting their spouses and their families.
Thank you. Thank you all very much for coming.
Let's try one more.
So what does it mean for you to become a citizen? Was this like a special day, or was it just like, I'm just going to come and get my certificate?
Well, it was special because I've been in this country since I was 7, and I'm now becoming a citizen, so it's like a big thing. Now I can actually vote, you know? So, yeah, it does mean something.
Right.
If you go to the URL on the screen, wnyc.org/series/from the field. We called the series segment From the Field. You can find these items. The first 30 items that we'll have up with audio will be up front and with their original MiniDisc pictured, followed by the more than 1,000 items that will follow. Will have the standard, sort of all have the same picture, which is a sort of a yellow or golden MiniDisc sort of icon picture with their basic catalog entry there. You also, there's a picture of what it looks like, the MiniDisc that we have representative of the bulk of them. And this is another page or link page we have for the series that's up on our website. If you go to the WNYC homepage at WNYC.org and skip to the bottom, you'll see a button or a link for archive collections or archive stories, and click on that, and there's a more than 200 item list and in alphabetical order, and we're there with this one for From the Field, in with all the other items we have pushed to the web. And I think that's about all I've got.